especially inside of like a spirit-based understanding of our insignificance, why be anything other than the narrator of your own story? I'm Autumn Brown, a queer science fiction writer, a theologian, a mother of dragons, and a healing justice facilitator for social movements living in rural Minnesota.
And I'm Adrienne Marie Brown, a New York Times bestselling author with a flat tire, living in Detroit.
And this is How to Survive the End of the World. Do you really have a flat tire?
It's true. I'm so sad because I share the car. And so I got the car. I was like, made sure I had the car for these 5 days that I'm home so I can like go swim and like be easy. Mm-hmm. And the car has a flat tire. So I'm like,
oh, Turk.
Oh, Turk.
Turk.
Car.
Turk is Adrienne's car,
baby.
named Turk because Turk is turquoise.
Yes.
It's very, very special.
And I didn't even pick Turk out. Turk just came to me as a turquoise car already. So
exactly. Well, we are so excited today. We decided that we would focus on pleasure.
Yay, my favorite.
Adrienne's favorite thing, which some people might have an idea.
Is it not
about.
Your favorite thing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm into pleasure. It's like,
okay, cool.
It's definitely my top 5.
Yay.
But what we thought we would do today is that I would actually interview Adrienne about pleasure activism.
Ooh.
And
I feel
like
it's a new idea to me. Ooh.
What?
Surprise.
Is that what we're here to do?
Interesting.
And I'm so excited because I feel like I've gotten to really witness your journey into identifying as a pleasure activist and how a lot of that has evolved over time. Mm-hmm. And this latest iteration of being a best-selling New York Times author on pleasure activism and getting like retweeted by Ashley Judd. It's like, it's a new level.
Well,
it's a new level.
I'm so excited. Excited. Did you see that I immediately put my foot in my Ashley Judd mouth? Did you see what I did?
You did. You were like, I'm sorry, I confused you for your sister. Whoops.
I was like, whoops. I just saw the word Judd and I just was like, all my childhood memories of going to concerts and seeing the Judds. Like, it was just like, that was the first concert I went to. And like, we grew up in a house that I was like, I think it was equal parts country and soul, you know, like I feel like
definitely.
There was a lot of country music and people may not know that about us, but I just got so excited and I jumped into it. And then, you know, she liked it before I could like go back and be like, no. So I just was like, my bad. But she did in that. I did get a hello to mom out of it, which was pretty cool.
You totally did. She
so
totally said, hi,
like,
mom.
She said, hi, mom. So basically like Ashley Judd and mom are like homies now. So.
Yeah. Now everybody knows each other.
Yeah. There's no such thing as failure.
Exactly. Never a failure, only a lesson. To kick us off, yes. I wanted to talk about your history as a pleasure activist. You know, I know you've identified for a long time as a pleasure activist and as a love goddess. And I'm wondering if you can share a little bit about what was happening in your life when you started using that language, the language of pleasure activism, the language of love goddess. And if you can talk a little bit too about how that relates to your early years as an organizer in the harm reduction movement, because I think that my memory is that plays a pretty important role in the evolution of this language for you.
Yeah, I was very lucky to land at the Harm Reduction Coalition in, I think, 2000. Let's see, it must have been 2001, like end of 2000, beginning of 2001 that I was there. And I was there for 2 years. And I was there, my role was as the like training coordinator. So there were all these like super badass trainers who were coming in to do trainings about safe injection sites and what is harm reduction and how do we reduce harm when it comes to sex work and, you know, what is ecstasy, what, you know, like really a whole slew of all these trainings, and a lot of and those people still to this day are like giants in that field and people that I look up to. But I got to enter in as someone who was like, you know, and I think I mentioned this in the book, but like I had tried to smoke weed with a dollar bill rolled around it, right? Like I did not get like proper training on like how to do drug, right?
How to do drugs.
How to drug. And you know, growing up in a military environment, it's not like we were, especially because we were officers' kids. I felt like there was just this boundary around a lot of what we got exposed to.
Yeah.
So it was like, you know, I dated someone who was selling weed, you know, like for the last month before we left Germany. But again, I didn't get to try it, or, you know, I was like, that was like my dangerous boyfriend or whatever. Right. And right. And then, you know, so I had smoked some weed in college, but not really. Right. I wasn't really like experimenting out. And I think I tried ecstasy for the very first time my senior year. And I want to mention that because ecstasy and what I became when I took ecstasy, a lot of that was where that sense of, oh, I'm actually like a whole pleasure dome unto myself. Like there was a sense of, you know, I was the one who would be like flitting around, making sure everyone had like a comfortable place to be sitting, and like, do you have enough water? And like, oh, you know what would be great right now is like Marvin Gaye, and like just really thinking about like pleasure on every different level. And I loved kind of curating pleasure for myself and inviting other people in when I was in that, you know, space where all my serotonin was flooding through my brain. And I was like, well, actually, right. And it was like all the insecurity I felt, all the sort of trauma that kept me from being able to feel into my body would fall away for a couple of hours, and I would be able to tap into this other self. So that was happening. And then I went to work at harm reduction, and I was like, you know, baby weed person, had tried ecstasy like once or twice. And all of a sudden I was like plunged deep into the pool of folks who were like, on the other side of this, there's a ton of overdosing and addiction and harm. And there's ways to avoid all of that, or to reduce the harm of all of that without having to go all the way to nothing at all. Right. And I was like, thank God. I actually think that like harm reduction saved my life, and it's a core philosophy that weaves its way through all my work. Because I believe, like, you know, first of all, seeing people who had experienced overdose and survived, seeing people who were deep into 20, 30 years of addiction, seeing those things and being like, okay, I'm not interested in that path. I'm not interested in the long-term life of overdoing it with drugs. I am really interested in figuring out how can I have these good feelings in the best possible way. Right. And then I got super interested in like, wow, so many people are being punished for these good feelings, and it's highly racialized. There's a lot of class stuff around it. It's like poor people and Black people and other people of color and women are being punished for accessing these pleasures that white men just call a good night out at the bar, right? Right. With a little, you know, bump in the bathroom and it's all good, right? And I'm like, okay, look, why are my people ending up in jail for this? Like, what's happening? So, you know, very early in my trajectory of life, the politics around pleasure and the politics of who gets to access it, all of that was really sharpened for me pretty early on. And then I was given a lot of tools to have an amazing, you know, my 20s in New York were freaking awesome, right? And I really say I feel like I came of age in New York. I'm really grateful that that's where I was for those experiments and for that awakening in myself. And one last thing, I want to shout out Keith Kyler, who's the first person I ever heard combine those two words, pleasure and activism. He was the founder. Yeah. So pleasure activism, he said it. We were at some thing having drinks in a hotel. I think it was like, maybe it was a Drug Policy Alliance conference. Like I've been trying to like, you know how me and memory are. I've been trying to like sift through my little foggy memory to figure out like what was, because I remember
where was I?
Exactly. Well, you know, it's one of those things where like there's a viscerality. I don't know if that's the word, but there's a visceral nature to the memories. I'm like, I remember that we were on big, wide, fuzzy open chairs, and it was in like a lobby type area, and it was at a thing, like other people that we knew were around us, and we were just having this really beautiful, intense conversation. And he was talking about pleasure activism and the fact that it's like it is our politic to have pleasure, right? It was a big deal. And he was this kind of person who would get on a dance floor, he would enter a space, and it was just like the elevation just rose up. Like, we are in another space now, and he was very free. And he founded Housing Works, which was very brilliant, like a very, very brilliant project. And so I was just blown away by him. And he ended up passing away a while after we met, like not long after we met, he passed away. So it's just this thing that stuck with me. Like, oh, that's a way to live. That's a way to be. And I feel like so much of my work has been, moving into these places of, oh, now I'm official. Now I'm a serious organizer. Now this and now that. How do I still get to own and be in right relationship with that part of my life?
Well, yeah, and I'm curious. The next question I have for you, I think, is on that line of thought. Because I feel like one of the transitions that I've witnessed in you, and that really comes through clearly in the book, is this transformation from seeking pleasure primarily through relating to others into like seeking pleasure from within. And I'm wondering if you could talk some about how your relationship to accessing pleasure has changed over the years. Like, what promoted that transformation? When did you start to make the shift? And / where do you feel like you are on that trajectory of shift, right? Because of course it's not like no transformation is ever complete, but you're definitely in a place where you're actively promoting a gospel of like seeking pleasure from within.
Yeah. I definitely feel like I definitely feel like this is an area where I feel like I'm still just learning massive things about how pleasure works in my system, which is exciting. And it feels like kind of an opening, like it's like I do feel like I've come something like from caterpillar to butterfly level, but then I'm also like, I might be a butterfly with 20 wings though. Like we the
imaginal cells aren't done.
Exactly. Like something is still unfolding in me. And but yeah, I would say I feel like I've gone rounds and rounds with this. And I feel like a lot of it was like confusion. Like there were so many years of confusion of like, I have all this desire in me, but it's really confusing about how to get it met. I would, try to date people, try to be in relationship with people. And I'm just like, what I want is just to have like great sex and enjoy each other's company and like be honest. That sounds good, right? And to me, it was just like, I don't understand. And like, I remember having this conversation with friends who were like, yeah, you're the perfect girlfriend. Like, I don't understand what's going on. I was like, me either, right? And trying to fall in love. And so, there was places where I was like, oh, I get a lot of pleasure of togetherness here, but we're not sexually compatible. There's other places where it was like, we're highly sexually compatible, but you're a liar. And for me, it's like, I'm just like, I feel zero pleasure in a dynamic where I can't feel like I can trust the other person. And it doesn't, I'm like, I don't mind kind of the surface level, like a little bit of projecting of the self, that kind of stuff, like a little swag. But I do mind like, oh, fundamentally, like you're not being honest with yourself. You can't be honest with me, those kind of things, right? Mm-hmm. Your nature is towards cheating or whatever. So I feel like I had a lot of experiences where I would have an awakening or a big opening. And I remember one particular one, I think I must have been about like maybe 24, 25 years old. And I had like a period of time where I just had all these men lovers, right? And maybe a woman or two in there too. But what I remember most is having like a series of these experiences where I would have a hot session with this guy. And then like the next day or within 3 days, it would be like some shit hit a fan, right? So I had one of them where a fiance and a mysterious unknown about fiance reached out to me like, what the, like tricked me in a text message. It was like I thought it was the person I had just slept with. So I was interacting with them like it was the person I had just slept with. And then she was like, actually, that's, and I was like, what? Like, what? I didn't sign up for that. Like, I was like, please you and tell that person I'm no longer interested. You enjoy your life and your marriage and like whatever. I was like, I don't want that.
I did not know about you.
Exactly. Right. Another had like, what I found out was just there was a lot of male lying. Right. And so like men who would act like they were available and I was continuously just naive, right? Desire makes me very dumb. So I'm definitely that person who I'm like, like I want you. And I asked you a direct question and you gave me an answer. Let's just go with that. Like, even though my gut would be like, no, girl, no, like,
right.
be liar, or at least maybe give it a day, you know? Or like a method that I feel like I've learned more about is like when I'm with someone who says that their partner's cool with it, I'm like, okay, if I call that person, that would be what they would say, right? And sometimes being like, I'm going to do that. I'm gonna let me just call them, or can you text them? Like, let's have this moment right now, because I don't think people mean to lie, but I think desire makes a lot of people dumb. So I feel like those moments really burned me. And after those moments, then I would go and I'd be like, I just need to be celibate, which feels like a very Virgo in response to me. Like, I'm just like, you know what? I just need to be a nun. That's what's actually, God is calling to me. I just need to go pray, meditate.
I'm just going to put on my chastity belt.
Right. Well, yeah, I would
only take it off to pee.
And masturbate. Like I've never been the kind of person who's like, I'm so celibate. I don't go to that level. Right. So maybe that's something in my future. I can't imagine ever wanting to do that with the limited time I have left on this planet. But, but I do find that what I kept realizing was I keep putting all my eggs in baskets that don't belong to me, that I'm not responsible for doing the spiritual work to weave and maintain. And I keep getting all my eggs dropped and broken open. And then I'm heartbroken and I'm confused and I'm having a hard time when I didn't actually do anything to deserve all that other than try to seek pleasure. And so that's when I started to turn more towards my inner life, my inner workings, and like getting to know myself better. So reading Audre Lorde's Uses of the Erotic as Power during that time was so important because she talks about when we are externally defined, that's when we got caught in the loop of suffering. And when we begin to define ourselves from within outward. And that's really how she talks about the erotic, is it's just like dropping all the way into the inside of a feeling and then coming back to the surface and beyond from that inner place. That was super important. I got it theoretically. I was like, woof, I want to know how to do that. That sounds like all that. And then I would say somatics is where I actually learned the technology of how you reclaim the skill set, right? Of like, how do you drop in and feel? Like, it's one thing to say that. And a lot of us get like overwhelmed by feelings, but I think it's very different to be like, I'm choosing, like in this moment now, I'm going to choose to drop in, find a sensation below my neck, notice where I'm hurting, notice where I'm not hurting, notice where I feel numb, notice where I feel alive, find my center, expand from center all the way out to the edges of myself, right? Really locate myself as a feeling sensational body in this real miraculous world. And when I am able to do that, it's not like it's instantly pleasurable or instantly joyful. Sometimes it hurts. You know, sometimes I'm like, oh, my back hurts, or something else is going on with my body. But a lot of times what ends up happening for me is, oh, I'm good in this moment. I actually am, I'm fine, right? Like there's some stuff that's, you know, heartbreaking back behind me, or something maybe that's stressful up ahead. But in this moment right now, I can drink some water. Maybe I need to twerk a little bit, whatever it is. And so I feel like, and I've been in somatics work, I think a decade now. Like 2009 was the first course that I took. And so I've been in some practice of centering since that time. And I would say that if I was to be like, oh, what's the one thing that really like has transitioned this? It's that centering practice of being able to say like, I know how to drop in, and like being able to center when you're feeling desire for someone. Like that centering practice is so helpful because I'm like, okay, I like you a lot. And all the blood is flushing everywhere and going where it needs to go to like prepare me to be your lover or whatever. And I can also center and be like, is this a good idea? Or with drugs, right? I'm like, I often will have this moment, like, you know me. So this is the other thing that people should know is like the first few long time of doing weed, smoking weed, I would get so paranoid. But I was also like, so there would be like, I'm having fun. And then somehow I would always tip over, often because I would just try to smoke too much, because I'm actually like, I don't need a whole lot. My mind works so quickly that I don't need a whole lot of anything to give me experiences of magic. So I'm like, or to put me over the edge into non-magic, And so
it doesn't take much.
It doesn't take much. And then all of a sudden you're sitting there like, I'm a total fraud. I don't even have feet, whatever it is. Yeah. I was just sort of like, I don't even know where, or I don't, not feet, but roots, right? I'm like, when I think of myself as being a centered, connected to the earth person, and then like, I'll get paranoid. I'm like, I can't feel the earth. I can't even feel myself. I don't belong to anything. I don't belong to these people. I don't belong to this moment. Like whatever it is, I would come undone. And so I would spend a lot of my time when I was supposed to be enjoying something. What I really wanted in that was belonging to the other people. We were all smoking together. And what I was feeling inside was terror and a total lack of belonging, right? And so it's been somatics that also helped me both know, like, you don't have to rush to doing anything with anyone, right? You can tune into your gut and see, are these safe people for me to try, doing something with? Also learning a ton about weed, right? Being like, oh, sativa is rarely my friend, right? Sativa is sort of an up energy. It makes your mind more active. That's the tendency of a sativa strain of weed. Whereas a hybrid that's mixed with more indica, that's more body high, more body relaxing, that's glorious for someone like me. Because I'm like, what I really want is to just be able to drop in a little bit more to being present. And then also, I can access the feelings of being high now without any substance.
Oh, right? Fascinating.
Like, I can really drop, because what I'm really always, like what blows my mind the most and what makes me feel the most high is extreme presence. Like being extremely present is like, especially with children or with a tree or, with a loved one, right? And being like, we're in this moment right now. Here we are. Like that is such a high to me. And I didn't used to know that, but it's a high, not because I'm reaching for belonging or reaching for something from that other person, but because I'm coming from all the way within myself and being like, this is what I want to do at this present moment of my life.
Right. Belonging to yourself. Well, and it's interesting too, thinking about the role of centering in relationship to sexual desire, because I can imagine that like the more centered and present one can become in a moment of decision, the more one can touch into like, what is the actual presence of threat in this moment and how am I interacting with that, right? That like, I think for so many of us who come from, who have sexual trauma, we have there's a confused relationship with the role of threat inside of the sexual relationship, because especially if you were traumatized sexually at a young age, then like there's some way that like the presence of threat energy in the sexual relationship isn't necessarily a turn off. But right. but it's still, but it's still a problem if it's there. Right. And so it's like, unless you can be in an encounter with it that feels like I'm present to the fact that this is here and I'm consenting or not consenting, but you have to be like, you have to be in a level of centeredness in yourself in order to be able to notice, is it there? And also, am I going to consent anyway, regardless of whether that threat energy or something that's not totally consensual is happening. So I can especially see the utility of a centering practice in relationship to like healing our relationship to desire when we come from traumatic experiences. And
that's one, I mean, I will say, there's anytime I do a book project, there's like the book that actually makes it into the pages of the book. And then there's all the book that didn't make it into those pages. And for this one, there were a few pieces that I commissioned that the people were not able to get in time to make it into the book. And one of the pieces was really about sex, BDSM, and drugs. And it was really, I was excited about it as a piece because for me, I'm like, oh, I think that BDSM has so much to teach us in movement. It might actually need to be like a whole own book or whole own zine just around like what we need to learn about negotiating and boundaries and being able to really clearly say, here's what I want and here's what I'm not interested in. And like, here's the actual power dynamics between us. And that's how we're going to do this. But really understanding that like part of how I've understood it is like, that you're not doing that negotiation while you're under a lot of influences of other substances, right? It's really about like, this is something I want to negotiate beforehand so that I can go into this experience clear. Maybe substances will be a part of what happens later. But for me, that has been like a shift in my life because I used to be like, oh, I'm about to possibly have sex. Let me get out of myself, right?
Yeah.
Like, because someone's going to be looking at my body. I don't do that, right? Someone is going to be like possibly putting their head between my legs. And, I just am like, so it was such an interesting thing because I'm like, all I want is to be met and satisfied. But all I know how to do because of trauma is dissociate during this moment, right? So I'm like, I want the desire, but I don't know how to stay in the actualization of that desire. And now I feel like that's one of the big things that I've been learning is like, how do I stay present while I'm with another person, even if that means, okay, now I need us to slow down, or communicating like, oh, that hurts, right? Like that's something I didn't used to know how to do. Like I would be like, that hurts. And I would just be like, that's I'm going to please this person if I just let them do what they need to do here. And it's like, oh, where did that come from? What's the root of that belief system? Where do I need to heal in order to show up and be like, my pain is not a part of your pleasure? Unless that's what we've agreed to, right?
Unless that's what we've agreed to.
Which you really won't, because I just don't like pain. It's not my thing,
right?
Right.
I
do love power play though, right? And like trying to draw the dynamics out of all those different things of like, ooh, I love it. Are you powerful? Good. Like show up, meet me here, because I'm also really powerful. But I think that all of that to me is like, we need much more explicit conversations around, and then particularly like those of us who we're in movement space together, we're trying to change the world together, and then going and having these very incomplete or incoherent negotiations around sex, if anything is even spoken. A lot of numbness, super highness, like not actually being present anywhere. I have people who will come to a meeting and not actually even be in that meeting. Like they're on 4 different devices in like multiple places and like just not present. And I'm like, okay, like where are places where we practice being present? To me, the bedroom is a great place to practice.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And thinking about the fact that like, of course, for all of us who come from marginalized communities that have experienced depression and trauma, there are very incredible ways that like experiencing pain inside of sex and inside of pleasure, or the experience of pain can be a pathway to accessing pleasure. But all of those things, right, do need to be like they need to be spoken into the room in order for it to be in order for some of those pathways to actually open, right? It's like, so that's,
because there's so much about reclaiming power in all of it.
Right. Exactly.
And, I've had a lot of people that I've interacted with in various ways over the years who have talked about or shared with me stories of reenacting some of the things that caused them trauma on purpose in scenarios where they were in charge as part of the healing process.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And I'm like, it's very tied in some ways to how somatics work goes down. We will sometimes create settings or scenes for folks in which you are, okay, like if you were to travel back in time and protect yourself in that moment where harm happened, how would you construct that protection? Right? If you could call in several people in the room here to help you do that, who would you call in? Where would they be? Between you and the person who caused you harm, at your back saying they can't come? Like, what is the alliance that you would need to actually feel safe? And I think about that, like, how do we create those alliances for ourselves? If you're not in, a somatics classroom, I'm like, we have to start in our private space, in our private practice. Like, am I being an ally to myself, or am I numbing myself? Am I being an ally to myself, or am I hurting myself? Am I actually satisfied and creating pleasure, or am I contorting and denying myself?
Right. And I love the connection you're making between allying to yourself as part of how you access that belonging from within, right? That that we all hold multitudes within us. And that means that we can be our own allies and access a sense of belonging from within that lets us know what does it mean to actually be in my agency right now?
That's right. And most of us actually know. Like, I think that's the other thing that I'm like, I thought I didn't know what could help me feel safe. I thought I didn't know how to feel satisfied, and I thought I didn't know like what protection would look like. But when I'm in the right hands or in the right company with people I trust, I know exactly what I need. Like if someone turns and says to me like, what could help you feel safer right now? My body, if I let my body answer that question, it knows exactly what I need.
Oh yes.
Right. Every single time. And so that has been kind of a miraculous learning. It's just like, oh, it's not that I don't know. It's that I was trained not to listen. And I can kind of decolonize that part of me that has been taught to be docile and silent and obedient because I'm Black, because I'm a woman, because I'm queer, because I'm fat.
Or has been taught to just dissociate your way through the experience, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of how it plays out, right?
If
I'm dissociated,
verbally,
like I'll be exactly like I'll be like I'm fully dissociated now, because the part that I was really enjoying is done too fast. So I was like, I was having a great time making out, right? I was feeling safe at that pace, but now you're barreling ahead, and I don't want to like say no to your desire. And this has been such a fascinating thing to me. It's like that we've actually been trained that it's worse to hurt someone's feelings than to actually be present and feel safe and say no.
Right.
Right. So I'm like, how does that play out in every aspect of our lives? I think it plays out in our work all the time, is that we're so afraid of hurting someone's feelings that we participate in all kinds of fuck shit.
Right. We're so afraid of like making someone else feel rejection that we're rejecting ourselves. I think about that. Exactly. I think about that all the time inside of like inside of sexual relationships, inside of work relationships, inside of friendships, that it's like, okay, I can't bear the idea that I would be responsible for this person feeling rejected by me. And so in response to that, I'm just going to reject whatever is coming up in me that's saying no to this, or what, whatever is coming up in me that has a need. I'm just going to be like, you don't exist. So back to drugs. So you enjoy drugs. You're very open about the presence of drugs in your life.
I love drugs.
I'm wondering, like, how do you apply a harm reduction approach in terms of how you navigate the presence of drugs in your life? Like, how does that lens inform your current practices?
Yeah, I feel like I apply a harm reduction lens in, like I said, almost everything I do. But there's a big part of it. There's one of the principles of harm reduction that's really about that the user is the one who is setting the goals and setting the culture and setting the agenda around how things are going to go. Mm-hmm. And there's another piece of it that like every experience of drugs is about the drug, the set, and the setting. So it's the actual substance itself and knowing what you can about that substance. And then the set, your mindset, like what is the mindset that you're bringing into that experience? And then literally the physical setting. Are you in a place that's actually safe to do this drug? Is this a good time, place, scenario, country, right? I recently had the experience of being in a country that I won't name with my vape pen and sort of pulling it out like I normally would, like, and someone I was with being like, death penalty here for that, and just be like, cool, great, thank you.
Wow.
Right. And like, it's something I just was like, to me, it's like, oh, it's legalizing so fast in so many places that it really wasn't on my radar that, there's still places that I want to be in the world where that it's not allowed at all. And it's considered so forbidden. Right. Mm-hmm. Verboten. Like, that old German just comes out sometimes, Mm-hmm. I would say other things I do around harm reduction. I very rarely do drugs with people that I'm doing any kind of work with. So like if I'm facilitating a meeting and everyone's like going to go smoke and just do something after hours, I don't engage in that way because I need the boundaries to be nice and solid. Especially because I love pleasure so openly, right? That I'm like, for me, it's really important that the boundaries are super solid and that I'm always indulging with people that I trust and to a degree that I trust. So it's like, that's something I pay a lot of attention to. And so that I don't put other people in weird positions, right? Because I'm like, I don't want anyone to have to feel like, oh, now I have to like not tell that Adrienne and I smoked this joint together or anything like. I'm just like, I don't want any of that, right? Y'all go have your fun. I support it. I approve of it. All of that. I've created a lot of different kinds of boundaries around like who I sleep with and how. I feel like when I was in my early 20s and going and facilitating, it would be like, there's a romance in every setting or whatever, you know.
Right, right.
I
fall in love wherever I go.
Exactly. And you're meeting a lot of people. And because like my experience was never like, oh, I'm powerful, right? Like that was not part of what I was ever trained to think about myself necessarily. So like it was kind of the surprise that it was happening in a room that I was like, oh, like and often it would happen in a day, right? Like I would walk in and no one was like operating towards me as a desirable person. But then once people would actually see me in my power, then by the end of the day, one of the participants, someone would be hitting on me, right? And it was so like welcome to me that I would like flirt back or whatever, right? And sometimes I would cross that line. And so I feel like that's been a big learning is like, I don't need to do that. There's so many fish in the sea, as it were. And that power dynamic is less and less attractive to me as I get older, right? Like I really am like, oh, you are drawn to power. You should go find some in yourself, develop it, right? You know, it's like less interesting to me. So I really set new standards for like what is even attractive to me and how I understand who and how I'm attractive to others. Because some people are just attracted to reputation. Some people are attracted to what they think of as like landing something, right? And when as a Black woman moves into power, you know, it's like, yeah, people want to land you. They want to like be able to claim some aspect of you. And so I feel more like part of my harm reduction is being more like I deal with people who feel like peers to me and who can really handle being in relationship with me. And I deal with people who can operate with a lot of discretion, right? Because I'm like, this is my private life and it's really important to me that I get to have one. So if I think you're the kind of person who would ever go out and need to talk about it, that, you know, to anyone, especially online, I'm like, that's not attractive to me, right? We're not doing this. Right. So I feel like harm reduction comes in those ways. And then, you know, there's a lot less things that I even experiment with. I'm very protective over like my mind. Right. Yeah. So I feel like there was a period of my life where I wasn't super protective of my mind and I was like, oh, I'll try it. Yeah, I'll try it. Right. Now I'm just sort of like, oh, like, I feel a lot of care for what I've been able to cultivate, for the freedom I've been able to cultivate, for the space that I have to now think. And even that means like, I'm not big into drinking anymore. Like I'll still go like have a drink, but I love the delicious early hours of the morning and the kind of thoughts that come to me then. And I miss those hours if I go out and have, you know, several
wild
drinks.
Night.
Exactly. Right. So I'm like, I save those, right? I'm like, those are more rare. I'm trying to think of other harm reduction things. In a meta way, I feel like writing the Pleasure Activism book has been a sort of meta harm reduction because it feels, yeah, I know. I'm like, maybe I can make the connection.
You've got this, Adrienne. I believe in you.
I was like, I can do it. I can do this. I can do it. Because it feels like carving out a space for me to be my whole self, right? So that I no longer have to be a compartmentalized self where it's like, over here, you know, in a top secret realm, I have pleasure. And then over here in the public eye, I am like a professional Black lady, right? And, you know, for me, it feels like being able to say all of that is me. And all of that is what, if you're experiencing power or if you're experiencing fluidity or if you're experiencing any of the things that I'm up to, part of why I'm good at what I'm good at is because I did mushrooms a few times enough to understand how everything's interconnected. And it informs what I do in a room. And it's actually, I don't want to leave that in the secret closet door. I want that to be part of who you are dealing with. I want to decriminalize and decolonize the way we think about drugs, right? Same thing as a sexual being. And I've been talking about this a lot, but I think we do a lot of harm to each other when we try to desexualize movement space and professional space. I don't think it's actually possible to do so. And so I think what we end up doing is creating these really harmful non-boundaries. Like they seem like boundaries, but they're actually like cages designed to keep us from being whole. And that we're supposed to like come into these workspaces and be in these cages around each other as if we're not all human beings. And what ends up happening, because it doesn't work, then everyone ends up having these secret, messy relationships that then blow up organizations. And you end up with like 20 organizations doing the same thing because people didn't just acknowledge and learn how to name and discuss and be transparent and be boundaried and be principled.
God,
about
it's so real, right?
Right? It's just saying like, you know what, rather than denying that we are attracted to each other, let's learn how to actually say, I'm attracted to you. Are you attracted to me? No, I'm not. Great. What's the boundary that we could hold that would make sure you and I both are able to be in this space?
Yeah.
Right.
And feel safe.
And feel safe. Do I have consent to do XYZ, hug you, kiss you, be in this space? No. Right. Being able to say no. One of the things I say in the book is like being able to say no actually makes the way for your yes. And I feel like what we've been doing instead is being like, all of society is like supposed to be this big no that keeps us from these behaviors, and it just doesn't work.
Or it's supposed to be this big yes, or it's supposed to be this big absence of no and yes. Because I think about like that dynamic you're describing about these cages around ourselves, that so much of what I see in organizations and institutional life is that it's just an absence of any direct discussion of what the dynamics are of anything, right? And so, and then oftentimes once the dynamics have risen to the level of either there being a conflict or a need to have any kind of accountability process around it, people's narratives are so fragmented at that point that it's really hard for people to even put together a full picture of what's happened. And that fragmentation can only happen inside of a situation where no one has been required to actually deal directly or transparently with one another, you know?
Exactly. I mean, I think this is the heart of so much of my work really is like, once you awaken feeling, once you awaken the fact that you're a nature body that feels, you're going to have access to a whole wide range of feelings.
Some of that you just said sexual. A nature body that feels.
Yes. Right. Like to me, that's what I like. I'm like, that's what you are. That's what I am. I'm like, I'm of an earth that has volcanoes, honey. You don't want to like try to, right? Like, I'm just like, that's what I'm of. That's how like land forms here. You know what I mean? So I'm just like, this is my place. And I'm a species that actually moves with a ton of desire. And even though all kinds of religions have tried to tell me that desire is only about making the next generation of the species, my pleasure tells me a different story.
Right.
Like my pleasure says, ain't no baby got to come here. You and me just going to be fine. All right here.
Right now.
So that feels really important to me to be like, oh, and also the thing that's been cool is like, once I awaken that part of me that, that part of me that's like, oh, I feel pleasure. I also feel a ton of other things. And it's helpful to be able to learn to communicate about pleasure and to be able to communicate around a ton of other things. And I had this moment yesterday. I was going through the airport and I went off on someone who was like really unnecessarily rude to me. And it was so invigorating and nourishing to be in an appropriate anger, right? Like I've been an appeaser in such a major way most of my life that I'm like, you're being mean to me.
I'll back off.
Well, I'll just be quiet and I'll go sit on the plane and fume and just let you get away with this behavior because, I don't want to be rude to you. I don't want to be yelling in public. I don't want to seem like a crazy black woman. I don't want to whatever. And it's just like, oh no, I am actually a crazy black woman. First of all, first of all, okay. You don't have this much therapy without being crazy. I'm a crazy black person and I have every reason to be, right? Like there's literally almost nothing y'all have done since my people got to this land that would lead to any other result than me being a completely crazy person who you should be cautious around because, anyway, well, I mean, I don't have to go all the way down, but you know what I'm saying? I'm just like,
all the way to
I don't remember who said it, but it's sort of like every day that black people are not taking an armed revolution all over this country is like, you know what I'm saying? It's another day that white people are just getting lucky because I'm like, based on what has happened to us, we would be in our rights to do that based on some other beautiful aspect of us that's like, we're down to try other things. Something else happens. And so in this moment though, it touched into that part of me that's like, I got like Lucille Clifton and June Jordan and Harriet Tubman and Ella Baker and like all these people at my back. And I just walked up here in gratitude, in a good mood, from a good life. And somehow I made it from one terminal to another with barely any time left because y'all have a badly designed airport and you didn't give any guidance that someone would actually need 45 extra minutes to get over here. But yet because I'm Black witch and I know how to work miracles and I know how to ask the universe to work in my behalf. I somehow made it here. And I walk up to this counter and the guy was so nasty to me. And I was like, I don't know where this nastiness is coming from. Maybe you've had like 4 mean experiences, but I yelled at him and I yelled at him, wow, you need to be fucking kind, right? Which feels very appropriate, you know? And sometimes you got to yell at people about kindness and fucking kindness. But it felt
was he able to course correct?
No. He tried to double down. The only course correction that happened was when he later came on the flight with like the list of passenger thing that they do, the final check or whatever. And he noticed that I was sitting in front in first class because I got my upgrade with my drink, like living my best life in total peace, right? Like to me, that's the only thing that I think maybe he would have to go and like meditate and contemplate on. Is like, I tried to ruin that Black woman's day, but I did not succeed. And like, what can I learn from this experience, right? And I got embarrassed in front of my coworkers and other people because this Black woman just went off on me. But for me, it was like very, I felt like I texted Alicia Garza because I was like, I feel like I just channeled you and I feel really powerful because I was just like,
I know. I love Alicia's like messages from the airport in terms of like just the shit that she goes through every time she
travels. Because I'm just sort of like, oh, I go through those things too, but I don't invite the confrontation or I don't step into the confrontation moment. Right. Oftentimes I'm just like, ugh, this is annoying. And then I keep going with my life. And in this moment, I was just like, not today. Right. Not today. Because Arya Stark and Alicia Garza and all these people were like in my present moment. But it also was like, that also comes from years of good orgasms. That also comes from years of like standing in a feeling. I love the way you just
connected that.
Exactly. To me, it's all connected, right? It's, I'm just like, I am a fully alive being in touch with all my feelings. And this is what, to me, this is what I say with pleasure activism. Like, what we're trying to do is harness what we can learn from the things that feel good to us that we can then apply to these places that currently don't feel good to us, right? And so I'm like, what I have learned in sex is that if I'm not there, it's not good, right? Like someone else might be enjoying it, but like we're not having a good experience. If I'm not actually present, right? I'm like, you might have a whole set of memories from that. I wasn't there. I don't know, right? I didn't feel anything. Real. And so for me, being able to stop and slow down and be like, let me drop all the way down and be like, I can, it's like, especially stuff that's not the sort of key points, right? So I talk about this more and more. It's like, if it's not straight up like nipple, clitoris, like then it's like, can I still feel that? I'm like, can I feel if you're like touching my arm and that feels nice? Or like that you're rubbing my back and that feels nice? Or you're like massaging my feet. Like, can I feel that I have a whole body, that all my skin is wired for pleasure? All these nerves are running through me, like being able to access all that. And I'm like, anger that gets stuck in my body has been part of what blocks me from feeling.
Oh, it's so real. Right? Yeah. Thinking about like past sexual experiences and like, what is it that you actually tune into from that experience as like the lived memory? It's like, is it the orgasm was so powerful, or is it like the way that person bit my back was just like exactly right? And like that specificity means something, right? If you can remember something that wasn't just the end of the experience.
Exactly. Because, and again, this is like where we try to like say decapitalism or decapitalize this experience. It's like, it's not about the outcome. It's not about the product. It's not about the wet spot. It's about the entire experience that we've just had together. And like, for me, I'm a smart woman. And so I'm like, I need a conversation. I need banter. I need to be like titillated. If my mind is not, and I think most humans are like this, but what I have experienced mostly is that I hear this from other women who are like, I read books, like I need you to use words with me.
Use your words.
Exactly. Like I'm like I'm like strong, silent nothingness is not really going to do much for me. Right. And I think this idea of like, I will meet your power with my power, which felt like that's kind of what was happening in that moment. As I was like, this man is trying to treat me like I don't have power. And so all I'm going to do is show him I do. And then we can go on about our lives, right? But
let me just correct that, and then we're going to keep
let
going.
You know what the hell is happening. And, it's also like been an interesting moment to be in, because I'm like, I very rarely feel the need to do anything like that, because I'm in my power, right? I'm just like, my power is like inviolate. Like, you can't touch it. It's fine. But in some moments I'm just like, no, I literally am out of breath trying to get here.
Well, and some,
you know?
there are
and
also
I have
times,
arthritis. This place was not, you know, the other thing was like my disability
airports
justice
are so
self came up,
inaccessible.
right? Because I was just like, I'm like running through this airport with arthritis. Right? Trying to get to your badly placed, you know, 3 terminals away gate that is not where it's supposed to be. So it's like, you know what I'm saying? I was like, my Virgo nature, my disability nature, like all these things are coming up. And I was just like, and you know,
when all of my powers combined.
Well, and you know, when I sit, you know, I'm like, he doesn't design the airport. He didn't design all that. But I'm like, it wasn't your job to design this airport. I'm not mad at you about that. It wasn't your job to make, you know, do anything else, but actually be nice to me. That's literally your job.
Right.
You are a customer service agent standing here.
Right.
And your job is to be nice and make sure that everyone who has a ticket on the plane gets on the plane.
Right. And it's like, if you're perfectly capable of being nice to a belligerent white man, which you probably did earlier today, then you're capable of being nice to me. He was literally
doing that, right?
Yeah.
Like, I walked up and he was being very, very kind and polite to a very belligerent Orthodox Jewish man, right? And then ignored me and then caught an attitude with me.
Yeah.
Right?
No.
But I want to say, I mean, like, and I don't know why it feels so important to me. It feels like a breakthrough moment for me. And I get excited when I have these moments where I'm like, that was not possible for me 5 years ago.
Yes.
Or 2 years ago. Right.
Yes.
And it's because I moved out of letting people abuse me. It's because I moved out of letting people use me for their pleasure. It's because I have moved out of being a sidekick in anyone else's story. I am the narrator, the leader, the guide of my own story, and in a very insignificant way, because we're all insignificant on this particular planet. Like, there's just so many of us moving so many things for such a short period of time that there's just a nature of insignificance to what we do. But inside that insignificance, we're also miraculous. And I'm excited because I'm like, I recognize my role in that balance. And you know, I stood in front of an audience in Toronto and I was like, my orgasms are liberating all of you. Like, you know, when a butterfly flaps its wings, right, that creates a hurricane. I'm like, when a Black woman has an orgasm, that can take down an entire patriarchal system.
Yes.
And I mean, what is Tarana Burke doing if not reclaiming that space for women, right?
Yeah.
That's saying like, this body of mine is not a trauma center. It's a pleasure center. It's a place that can heal from what you've done. And like, she's taking everyone down that needs to be taken down while also still asserting our need for healing. Like, it's all connected.
I love that too, because it's like, especially inside of like a spirit-based understanding of our insignificance, why be anything other than the narrator of your own story? It's like, literally, if you could decide, you know,
like if you had the option, why be, you know, why? I guess my thing is also this piece, like, every orgasm is different. Like, every snowflake is different. Every body is different. Every pleasure is different. Like, what you experience, what you Netflix and chill might be different from what I experience. Like, I just feel like there's so much diversity of wonders that can happen. And we get taught to not pursue them unless it serves capitalism. I think about this all the time, right? That I'm like, we get taught that pleasure is something you have to buy and that you can never be satisfied, because if you were satisfied, you would stop buying stuff, and that you can never be beautiful enough, because if you felt beautiful and sexy, you wouldn't
be buying
you wouldn't
things.
keep buying stuff, right? And I feel like I see so many people, I'm like, you think there's something wrong with you. That's the only thing wrong with you.
Right.
Like, that's literally the only thing. If you recognize like, oh, I'm an incredible person living on a planet that is a hot mess, but I have agency. I can find community.
And it's got volcanoes.
I can find pleasure. And it's got volcanoes. And I've got a volcano in me.
Yes. So. Literally. So last question.
Okay.
Last question. You've been on book tour. You've been holding events all over the country and internationally, because Toronto is included in that.
And I was in London. Yeah.
And you were in London. That's right. You were in London. And I'm witnessing that you are encountering so much magic as you like navigate all these various people that are showing up to your events that are just like feeling so lit from the work. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit as we close out about what you've learned about pleasure since the book came out, from interacting with all these folks who have their own pleasure stories to share with you.
I mean, I think that the main things, I love this question, Autumn, by the way, just question excellence. Okay. I think
what I do.
It's literally what I do. Well, and because game recognized game, right? So but yeah, I would say that the main things, one is there's a huge part of pleasure that is about permission. And what I have done here by pulling together this text in some way is giving people more permission to access what is already theirs. And so a lot of people who are coming through the line to get their book signed or want a selfie or any of that, the ones who are the most like emotionally unhinged, right? And it's like always so sweet because they come up and they're already kind of shaking like a leaf. There's some tears in their eyes. There's a lot happening. And I'm like, I know this has nothing to do with me for real. Like they have touched into something that's sacred in them that they didn't know that they had permission to touch. Yes. And I'm saying, not only do you have permission to touch it, but it's kind of your responsibility as a freedom fighter to touch and liberate that part of yourself that is your spark, that is your divine energy, that is your pleasure body, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's actually you have to be, no matter what else you're doing. And you don't stop any of the other stuff. It's like in addition, right? In addition to all that work, you make sure that you are lighting up that part of you and reclaiming it from oppression and repression and depression. Okay.
Yes.
So the permission piece has been big.
You get those pressions.
I just want to say the pressions got to go. I'm trying to think if there's any good pressions now that we've gone down that road. Okay, let's leave that for our listeners to tell us. I want to know if you know of any good pressions.
Tweet at us if you know of a good pression.
Yes. My heart is open, but I just cannot imagine anything. So permission has been one big thing. And then I think it's so interesting, like how many people, their orientation towards me is very much like, now I know everything about all sex things ever. And I'm like,
that
no,
you know everything?
Me personally,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
That me personally, I'm like, no, like there's a lot of stuff that's not in this book because I don't know those things yet. I want to know, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'll say that I got the experience of going to a kink party, a little play party, and having like a kink moment. And I won't say much about it. You know, it was pretty mild in the grand scheme of kink things, but something that was really exciting for me was I was like, I have wanted to do that since I went to California. Like when I went to Ruckus, I had a sense at that point. I was like, someone had mentioned one to me and I was like, I would love to do that. But I was an executive director, a new executive director. And it just felt like that is not a thing that I'm allowed to do.
That's not a thing that we get to do when we
don't get to
in
do
charge
that.
of things.
I'm like a woman, I'm like, I need to basically never be seen as a sexy person because I need to be a boss and because all the water is so murky and I can't let anyone undercut my power by thinking about my pleasure. So it's been like, this long time that I'm like, I would love to do that, but I can't because of this, because of that, because of this. And there was something really powerful about landing in that space. And then afterwards, one of the people who was like helping run the space came up and she was like, it was so amazing to see how humble you are because you really didn't know what that could do. Right. And I was like, yeah, I don't know.
Was a newbie.
Exactly. I was like, I feel like I still have a beginner's mind about sex. And I think that's why I enjoy it. And I think that's why I am a love goddess, because rather than approaching each experience, like I'm the most experienced person in this room, I mostly approach it like, wow, like, let's see what could happen here. I don't know. Like what, how could we use this or how could we use it? I feel like there's a lot of curiosity that is guiding my experience. And that's been a hilarious experience of interacting with people who are like, yeah, you want to come to my dungeon or whatever? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. I was like, maybe. I don't know. Let's try. I don't know. So, that piece has been really amusing. And I feel like I've learned a lot about what curiosity can do to even a playing ground that seems otherwise tilted, a certain way. And then I think the last piece of it is I've learned with a lot of tenderness that there's so many people who are like, I can't have orgasms or I have to be sober. That's the only option for me. Like I can't, have a little bit of any of these things. Like it's not safe, or I'm asexual, and where do I fit? And, just really feeling the tenderness for folks who, again, have been made to feel like there's something wrong with them, rather than understanding that like we are in a system where wrong is the main way that we get controlled. The concept of wrong is a control mechanism. And so trying to have these tender conversations with people where, I'm like, maybe that's true about your body and your system and your mind. And maybe, right? The main thing is, do you know how to feel yourself and listen to yourself? Because these labels, I don't think help us, right? Like people get labeled. And I think now we're in such a labeling culture. Yeah. And people are often, I feel like I meet so many people now who are like, hi, I am and then they'll give me like 20 labels for what they've figured themselves out to be. And, mostly I'm just like, okay, just make sure you leave some room for yourself to be changing. How much are we taking on labels that keep us from understanding what can be pleasurable in our lives? If that makes sense, right? So I'm like, maybe you can't have an orgasm, or maybe you just haven't had one yet. And maybe there's some deep healing work that you're going to have to do before that becomes possible. Maybe you won't have a vaginal orgasm or clitoral orgasm, but there's other things that are possible for you, right? Like I met someone the other day who was like, what? A nipple orgasm is a thing? I didn't know that was a thing. And I was like, oh yeah, honey, that's a thing. You should definitely know about that thing, right? And also like telling people, like, to me, I'm like, I have orgasmic experiences all the time, right? And I think that it doesn't matter what sexuality, gender, anything else you are. I think that level of like, oh, this is so right. This is right in an explosively awesome, exciting way. I think that kind of stuff is available to so many people. So I just think being in the tenderness of those spaces where, for me, writing the book was not a way to push anyone out of accessing anything, right? It's really like, to me, an invitation to be like, learn more and more and more and more about who you are. Learn more and more about the community you need around you in order to actually be safe and experience pleasure. And the way that I define pleasure in the book is just happiness, joy, satisfaction, contentment, right? I'm like, I think those things should be available to all human beings. I think that the body is the doorway to those things. I think it's how we really, really, in a visceral way, feel those things. The mind is a part of the body, but the mind should not be doing all the work of trying to figure it out. It's like there's a way that we have to drop in and feel. And
there's a reason why the mind's not in charge of that.
I will say there's a lot of people who are like, I'm really challenged by feeling. I don't think that feeling is a great thing. And to me, that's so much of that is like, I think healing from trauma is absolutely necessary, because I think feeling should be something everyone can do.
Yeah. Beautiful. What a beautiful note to close on. I mean, that is such deep wisdom that you just arrived us at. Thank you for this work. And
thanks, sister.
It was beautiful.
Thanks for being a part of it.
Well, my pleasure. Ha ha ha.
You're not the first person to make that joke, but it's still great that you did.
But maybe I'm the first person to make it during an interview. I just want to say it's been really delightful to watch the reception of this book. And especially knowing that, and we can cut this if you don't feel comfortable with this being in the interview, but I know that you had some real trepidation before this book came out, because you just had no idea of whether this would be received well. And it's in some ways such a different project than Emergent Strategy. And I think that before the book came out, you were maybe feeling into that difference more watching the actual reality of how people have received the work. And watching you like step fully into your glory in it has been just like an honor of my life to get to witness. So
thank you, sister.
Yeah,
I really appreciate that, because I totally was.
I'm your biggest fan.
I do, and I really deeply appreciate, because I definitely felt like rounds and rounds of like, girl, this is such a weird, wild thing to decide that you need to focus on in this moment. Like, there's so many crises happening, and it's just like, yes, and actually this is the way to drop down and get under all of them. Like,
exactly.
And I think that's the thing we have to do right now is go underground.
This book is medicine for
and
everybody
just like
right now.
Mycelium our way to the future. And I want to thank you for contributing. I feel like you and so many people were so brave, like not quite sure what you were contributing to and still being brave and sharing something that was like so vulnerable and intimate and powerful about raising sexually liberated children and feeling into what does it mean? What are the pleasures of parenting? And like, it's just awesome that you did that. So
thank you for inviting it. And it's so funny to see the piece in the book now and to remember the conditions under which I like shot it off and to be like, oh, I totally wrote that piece in like a span of maybe about 5 minutes. Because I was in the midst of parenting. And so it was like a very perfect situation to be like, oh, yeah, I can write something really quickly about the pleasures of parenting. It's basically going to be scenes because that's all I got time to write. Boom.
Yes. Yes. But it's such a beautiful
see
piece.
It and to be like, oh my God, yes, it's exactly a perfect snapshot of what the fuck it is. Exactly. And I love to know, I love remembering the conditions, like the fact I was probably nursing somebody or something, right? No, I wasn't nursing anymore. But
it was
like
post-nursing, but it was like
post-nursing.
Mairead had been in the bed, you know, in that morning and had been like cuddling with Mairead and then running around. And it was just like, I love the scenes you captured because it feels like this is what's so delightful about being around children. Yeah. And that it is such a pleasure to love children and be loved by children and where everyone is actually safe and everyone is being taken care of and their needs attended to. So yes, all the things are good. And yeah, I've been blown away by the reception too. And it keeps getting kind of bigger and bigger. And, you know, some of my more sarcastic friends are like, bitch, it's called a pleasure thing. But, you know, I'm like, I know, but still, you know, it's exciting to see that people are so hungry to be able to feel themselves.
Yes.
And I'm glad to be a part of it.
Yes. Thank you for the work and for being who you are. I love you. And I know that all of our listeners love you too and love this book.
I love you too, sister.
All right.
Let's the idea of interviewing me this way.
Oh my God. My pleasure. No, I'm not going to do it again. I'm not going to do it again.
You can't help yourself.
I can't help myself. Right. Thanks for listening to our show. We're on Twitter and Instagram at End of the World PC. We're also on Facebook at End of the World Show.
If you would like to make a donation to sustain our work, you can do so at patreon.com/endoftheworldshow.
Another helpful thing you can do to help our show sustain itself is to write us a review on Apple Podcasts. If you're an iPhone person, thanks for doing that.
This show was produced by the gorgeous and pleasure body Zach Rosen.
Music for today's show comes from Tunde Olaniran and Mother Cyborg.
Also pleasure bodies.
Pleasure bodies everywhere.
Wait, before we stop recording. Did you stop yet?
No, I didn't.
Okay, I think we should start doing a little thing like Marvel Comics does, where we leave just a little thing right after the credits for those people who make it through the credits.
Okay, what do you think that thing should be right now? Just knowing that it's happening?
No, I think that we should. Okay, right now, because I really have
to pee.
Okay, great. I think you should make. What is the sound of the pleasure of peeing?
That I do that almost every time I pee now.
Me too. I was like, you really landed that shit. Damn. All right, great. I think that's a great thing for our listeners.
Love you.
I love you. All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.